Hey y'all, what's going on? About 2 weeks ago, I had it up to my neck with work. I was so burned out I couldn't even come in. So I grabbed my wife, I kidnapped her, and I took her down to Florida to the Gulf Coast to the beach, and we spent 3 days doing nothing but sitting on the beach, drinking beer and soaking up some sun. It rained a couple of days, but that was okay. We were away from work and together, and that was the best part of it all. But while I was down there, I took a little bit of video, and that's what you're going to see. So my last video, we did dogs on a bike ride, which has nothing to do with Bigfoot. And then now we're doing beach videos with Bigfoot stories. It is so crazy. I think I've lost my mind. You know, if I see something pretty, I video it, and we're going to do that. Also, at the end of the video, I'm going to play this whole song. A lot of people love the music that we include with these videos, and this is some, I don't know, it'll just get you in the mood for the summer. Summertime is almost here. Shorts and flip-flops and suntans and gardens and cutting grass and cold beer and barbecues, and it is just my favorite time of year. And hopefully you'll just get in the mood, and when this music cuts in at the end, just lay back, close your eyes, and go to the beach with me. Alright, now we've got 3 really good Bigfoot encounters. Everybody who sends a Bigfoot encounter in, they're just great. And I'm ready to get rolling on it. Alright, here we go to the beach.
On the bayou, by the delta, there's a river that runs both ways, and the cypress alleys go on for days. If you want to.
This is an encounter sent to me by Carl. Carl used to live in North Mississippi, where I live now. He doesn't live there now, but this is an experience he had when he was a kid. He writes, I lived in Boonville, Mississippi as a kid for a few years. We built the Piggly Wiggly there on Main, there in town. It's a great small town. I joined the Scouts back then, and we went camping on a jamboree in Tishomingo State Forest. We snuck off before daylight and went hiking, and were going to the Tennessee River. So I'm not sure the name of the part we were in, but we were 12 years old. It was before sunrise, and we knew we would get in trouble, but oh well, we were kids. We were fearless. We soon noticed we were in a swampy area as we got close to the river. We heard something following us up the ridge and did not know what or who it was. It paced us, and it broke limbs as we moved, but we never saw it. We got to the river, and it was the biggest river I had ever seen. We did not talk about that noise as we were intent on getting back to camp before we were missed. That was in 1969. I never forgot that feeling and the sound of being followed. I've had some other experiences in Alabama and have friends with YouTube channels on Bigfoot. I know there is something in the woods and in the land between Tishomingo and Bankhead Forest in Alabama. I now live in Key Largo, Florida, and go hiking in the Everglades nearby. I am aware of creatures and usually carry only a machete and a knife. As reports come in down here, I've decided to start hiking with a semi-auto 12-gauge with buckshot. I know there are bears, monkeys, big snakes, monitor lizards, and I have friends who have claimed to have seen Bigfoot, or booger as I call them. I have only heard a growl in the backwater mangroves in the glades, and it was enough for me to know that I need to carry a weapon. If I see one, I'm going to kill it. Talladega National Forest, Alabama, it is inactive and on the same latitude as Bankhead and Tishomingo. A ranger there admits and told a buddy of mine that he had seen one and later apologized to him for ridiculing him over a sighting report that he made. That was in the last 2 weeks. It's been 49 years and I have never forgotten the fear I felt as I knew something big and intelligent was following us that morning. And he goes on to say he enjoys the channel, and apparently he and I have the same accent. We're both rednecks. But Carl, that's a good story. That Tishomingo area, I actually ride bikes with my son and grandson on the 10-ton waterway levee. There's miles and miles of gravel levee there, and if you've You know, if you got a decent bike, you could just make a whole day of it. And I've hunted in those areas, and my son hunts in those areas. And as a little bitty kid down around Amory, I had family that lived in the Tombigbee River bottoms, and all those swamps and river bottoms in that Tombigbee waterway are just spooky. They look different than, for instance, the Mississippi Delta. They're pretty, but they're just different. It's hard to explain, and maybe it's the trees or the vegetation that grows there. I don't know, but it just looks different, and it has this spooky air about it. But Carl, thanks for the story, and hope you're soaking up the sun down in there in Key Largo. All right, buddy. This story is submitted by Joe. I don't know. He doesn't say where the encounter happened. It's a great story. It's a scary story. He writes, I have a story I'd like to share. It happened years ago back when I was in high school. My friends and I would camp out in the woods in and around the neighborhood. My friends Brad and Steve and I were heading out into the woods on a Friday. It was just about dark, so Brad ran ahead to get the fire started while Steve and I carried the cooler out to the site. As Steve and I headed down the path towards the site, we stopped for a second to put the cooler down. We both lit a cigarette and were chatting when all of a sudden I noticed it was eerily silent. No crickets chirping, no birds, nothing, just dead silence. So as I say to Steve, is it me or is it awfully quiet all of a sudden? Steve agreed, but I don't think it unnerved him as much as it did me. The next thing I know, about 100 yards down the path, there was an almost 90-degree turn. Brad comes hauling around the corner, and as soon as we saw him, he started yelling, "Go! Run! Run! Get out of here!" Steve and I stood there waiting for Brad to get to us to see what was going on. Brad just kept screaming, "Run! Go!" as he blew right by us, heading back out of the woods. So me and Steve tossed our cigarettes, left the cooler there, and started running after Brad. Finally, when we got out of the woods, we caught up to Brad in a field that led to some other woods. You could see in Brad's face that he was spooked. I've never seen anybody that scared before in my life, and as long as I've known Brad, even still to this day, he doesn't scare easily, if at all. After we caught our breath, we asked Brad, "Dude, what was that all about? What happened?" He started saying, I saw something in the trees. You guys are going to think I'm lying, that I'm full of it. So after about a minute and a couple of drags off a cigarette, Brad says, "You guys have known me for a long time. Have I ever lied to you guys about anything?" "No," we said in unison. So Brad says, "When I got to the campsite, I started to grab some wood to get the fire going. And as I was picking up some wood, I got a real eerie feeling like something was watching me. I looked around and didn't see anything, and then as I reached down to pick up some sticks, I noticed that it was dead quiet, no sound at all. As I stood back up after picking the sticks up, I noticed movement up in a tree on my right, and when I looked up there, I saw something." "Well, what did you see?" we asked. "I don't know how to say this," said Brad, "or how to explain other than to say I saw a predator like in the movie." Needless to say, me and Steve started laughing, but something in the fear in Brad's face or the fact that he doesn't lie stopped us after a few seconds. So as Brad started to say, "I knew you guys wouldn't believe me," Steve looks back at him and says, "Brad, a predator? Come on." And Brad started to explain, "I didn't see an actual predator, but you know in that movie how it camouflages itself and it's like see-through? That's what I saw. It was up in the trees and I could see the distortion." He explained it as a distortion, was moving side to side, almost like swaying in the breeze. And then he said he saw it move over to another tree next to the one he spotted it on and just dropped the sticks in his hands and took off running. So the three of us just stood there trying to decide what and if we were men enough to go back and get the cooler so we could go back to my house and party there. Brad waited in the field as Steve and I went back into the woods to grab the cooler with our heads on a swivel. Luckily, the cooler was only a couple of 100 yards into the woods and was visible from the field where the path started. Otherwise, that cooler would be staying there for the night. I've been in those woods 100 times since then and grew up in them prior to that night. Okay, does anyone else have any comments on this cloaking and camouflaging. That's pretty cool. That's I think that's interesting how I remember that movie The Predator, and I was always amazed at how that thing just kind of blended in, and it's almost like a reflective type camo. I'm not sure. It's pretty cool. Great story, Joe. I appreciate you sending it in. Hope you guys are doing okay. This story was sent to me by Melody, and Melody is from North Central Illinois. She doesn't say if this is where this encounter happened. Let's assume it did. She writes, "This encounter happened to my parents. My father told me about it after my twin sister and I had a scare one night. The date was around 1967 or 68. Okay, she tells me in her email that she's had some encounters and that she's going to write me back and let me know what those were, but this is her parents' encounter. My father and mother went on a double date with some friends, and they were on their way back to town, and they decided to stop and park for a while before dropping the girls off." Woo, parking. Was that before they were married, Melody, or after? Because if it was after they were married, that's pretty cool. I'd go parking with my wife. She's pretty good looking. Anyway, Mom and Dad decided to get out and sit on the hood of the car and enjoy the evening breeze and the sounds of the frogs by the creek. They were sitting there for about 30 minutes when they noticed there was no noise, no frogs, nothing. My mom was getting a bit nervous because they started hearing a huffing noise from the trees. So they decided to get in the car and just leave, but before Dad could start the car, they could hear whatever it was coming towards them through the woods. Dad got the car started and dropped it in gear, and then he peeled out throwing rocks and dust, and they heard a growl from the back of the car and something like claws scratching down the trunk. And then the car was being lifted off the ground. The couple in the back were freaking out, and Dorothy and Mom were screaming. Dad told John to get the flashlight from under the seat and shine it out the window and see what it was. And when the lights caught what was behind them, John and Dorothy both screamed and told my dad to go. This thing let go of the bumper to cover its eyes and stop the gravel from hitting it. This thing, he said, was mad. It screamed so loud it shook the air and the windows. When they got home to my mother's house, they checked the trunk and it had scratches down the length of it, and the bumper was pulled away from the car and bent. They never went parking there again, but Dad still goes fishing there. It's too scary to go parking there, but it's not too scary to go fishing. I think that's funny because when dudes get on some fish, you just go fishing. But she says he only goes during the daylight. And she says, "Thank you for letting me share that. I have my own experiences, and I will tell that later." Melody, that's a great story. You all know I love these old retro stories from before the internet. What do you do when something grabs your car? You just scream and hope for the best, and apparently that's what they did. What a scary experience. Thanks, Melody. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to be putting up another video in about 24 to 48 hours. I think I found a faster way to do this. And hopefully we can get back on a 2 to 3 video per week schedule because I love doing this. It's awesome. All right. Hope you guys have a great weekend and great week, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
On the bayou by the delta, there's a river that runs both ways, and the cypress alleys go on for days. If you want to, we can go there, and to be there with you. In the summer, I'm out there fishing when the catfish is ready to bite, and when the nets are filled with crawfish, it's a sight. I go swimming. No gators even look my way. On my back I float there, hear the crickets chirping away. Yeah, if you want to, we can go there, and to be there with you. If you want to, we can go there, and to be there with you. Oh, Jamaica, Jamaica.
Howdy.